Streams that flow back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. As those streams meander, they're forming cut banks and point bars. I know you guys are all stoked. I know you guys are excited about getting out of class early, but we have to have class first. And then I can let you out, okay? We have to at least fake it. So, you have your meandering stream. All of those cut banks and point bars are constantly changing the location of that channel. So over time, that river is going to cut a very wide valley, and that valley is called the floodplain. Plain because it's flat, flood because that's where all the water goes when there is one. Now the nice thing about floods is that they distribute a lot of sediment when they recede. When floods drain, they leave behind a lot of organic rich sediment across the floodplain. So many floodplains provide very fertile soil for agriculture. And that's usually what shows up first on floodplains, or farms and ranches.
They just have to be okay with it for a few years.
Or maybe it's a crop of corn. Yeah. Or, some cows. So, usually what comes in first is you have, in here, we'll draw a quick cow in here. Lean here. Wow. That's a cow. So it's very lean here. So, the farms come in because they want to exploit those fertile soils. Now, getting into floods, you lose crop of corn, you lose this, you lose that, no big deal. But the problem comes in when these farms begin to get successful. And you start to get more and more of them. Well, when you have, this is back in the day, okay, this is way back in the day, you don't have $750,000 combines that, are all lit up with electricity and they have them now, you can put them in the field and program them, and then go in the house, put your feet up and have coffee. They'll use GPS and just harvest the field for you and then beep when they're done, right? They didn't have that then, back in the 1700s, 1800s. It had to be done by hand. So if you're on a big farm, several hundred acres or more, you got to do that by hand. You need kids. Because you're going to teach the kids how to do it, and they're going to help you. Yeah, that's how that works. So if you're going to have kids, somewhere there's got to be a woman. And if you have a woman living out here in the middle of nowhere, she's going to have one of these. Because you need a place to buy the coffee and the sugar and the Calico and that's all that is. Did we do this already? So, you have to have a livery for the animals. You have to be new horses or a new plow. You have to have, because this is all of your goods right now are coming in by boat. You have to have the lumber mill on the river, because they're using a water wheel to turn the saw blades to make the lumber in, so that you can build a new barn and flood takes out the old one. And of course, if you have a store, you're going to need a bank. And if you have a bank, you're going to need a sheriff. And if you have a sheriff, you're going to need a jail. If you're having all these kids to help you on the farm, you're going to need a school. You're going to need perhaps churches or synagogues or some religious places of worship. Not everyone's going to want to work on the farm. You're going to need someone to run the store. So you're going to have businesses and offices. You need doctors, veterinarians.
Don't forget the saloon.
Oh gosh, yes. There's someone over here, but between the bank and the sheriff's office. That's usually where it's going to end up. You're going to have a saloon.
Are they living?
Let's be realistic. They're working by hand 20 hours a day. Let's be realistic. There you go. So what happens is that over time, these floodplains go from being farms to St. Louis, to Memphis, to Cincinnati, to Dayton, Pittsburgh. Oh gosh, yeah. Now it's a problem because it's not the 1800s anymore. It's 2015. We don't have a lumber mill on the river. We have a chemical manufacturing plant on the river on the property that used to be the lumber mill. Because when the lumber mill went out of business, the land was sold cheap and people bought it. And over the years, it's just been cheap land. Oh, okay, well, we put the chemical plant here. Because, we need water from the river. Okay, well, now, you don't want a chemical manufacturing plant to get flooded, because then that can spread chemical contamination through your entire water system. That's not good. We have courthouses and document storage. I mean, who's ever had like their wallet stolen or lost? And you had to go to the county court. You had to get your birth certificate and a new license and prove who you were. You had to get you're trying to refi a house. You got to get your divorce papers, and you got to get. Oh, are you kidding me? What happens if they lose it? Nice. There's a treat. Suddenly, we lost those records in the flood. You'll have to check with your original hospital. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get my original birth certificate. Basically, you're telling me I no longer exist now because it's gone. Yeah, that's a real treat. You don't have, a few families here and there and here and there, probably with their own boats on farmland. You can have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in this city that need evacuation, that'll need rescue, that'll need fresh water, that'll need food. If it's during winter season or it's cold outside, they'll need good dry clothes and blankets. You have all kinds of overpasses and bridges and railroad trestles going back and forth across the river that in flood may not be usable, may be damaged or gone. So, it becomes a bigger problem. How do we fix this problem? Well, scientifically, the first answer that's going to come out of our scientific mouth is move the city. Let the floodplain go back to being agriculture. Put the city up on the hill. And after the 1992 floods on the Mississippi River, there were many communities that did that. They actually moved the entire town up to higher ground. They bought the farmland at the top of the hill, the farmland back in the floodplain. But, you're gonna do what? You're gonna go up into North Dayton, where we have some of the city's most historic homes, or you're gonna go up into East Dayton, where we have a lot of other historic homes and single-family housing. But you're gonna go into West Dayton, up there, the Germantown. You're gonna up there by where they have the Veterans Cemetery and all that. Here's a good one. You're going to go up South 48 and tell the city of Oakwood that you're moving Dayton up there? Yeah, that's not going to go over well. There's a reason why Oakwood exists. It exists up on the hill because we had a flood in 1913. And the people that can afford it, that's where they went. To build the houses away from the river, up on the hill. So now, for most cities, it's just not practical. It's ridiculous. You can't do it. So instead, we try to do what we can to control flooding, to try to minimize the potential of its occurrence, and to especially minimize its impact when it does occur. Try to minimize the potential for injury and loss of life, and minimize the potential for property loss. That river down the street, the Great Miami, is a meandering river. But no, we cannot allow it to meander. Because if it meanders, it'll take out to the banks, it'll destroy the city. So we do everything we can to keep that river where we want it in that channel. We'll put up barriers, we'll put in and take down low dams. We will dredge the bottom, dig out sand out of the bottom, keep the channel where it's at. We can't afford to have it move around. We've designed a set course for it, and that's where it needs to stay. Because we've built everything up around to the very edge. Also notice that when you go down to the river and you drive over it, there are no trees there. There are no trees along that river. There are no trees, no big bushes and shrubs, and there's some wetland stuff, some cattails and things like that. But there aren't what there usually are on floodplains. Just a lot of wetlands, swampy areas full of trees and bushes and shrubs. You can't have trees down there by the river. You out of your mind. They start growing, we go down there and you cut them down. You can't have them down there. Because when that river floods and those trees get uprooted, they become battering rams floating down the river at 40, 50, 60 miles an hour in a flood, and they cause impact damage to all of our structures crossing the river, all of the overpasses and the railroad trestles. There are 2 overpasses in the river that have big areas where concrete's broken off.
It's underneath where you can't usually see it. And it's basically from tree impact. They got smacked into the tree and broke the concrete off. Yeah. Yeah, we fixed it yet. They can't do that. But yet those trees and those plants in the natural system would do a lot more to help absorb excess water and control that flood than anything we could do. But now that we've got a city there, we can't let it be there. So we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot there. Are there any questions? Well, let's look at what a flood is. Floods occur when there is more water than what can fit in the stream channel. That river down the street can be absolutely, positively full to the very top, but technically won't be flooding until it spills over the sides. That is a lot of water. More water, higher volume means greater discharge, means higher velocity. Higher velocity means more power. So by the time a river channel or a stream channel fills to capacity and then begins to overflow, that high volume of water is moving. And it can be moving much, much faster than normal. Right now, the water down the street is probably moving at, well, we've had quite a bit of rain. It's probably up to maybe 15 miles per hour. But in flood, it can easily be 40. Because the more water that's in the channel, the more water that is away from any friction with the sides and the bottom, so they will move a lot faster. We have essentially two main types of floods that can occur on streams. We have upstream and downstream. Upstream, uphill, higher elevation. These are, you're into the peasantry, you're into the serfdom, you're in where all the little tiny streams and creeks are, way up in the headwaters, where you have little streams that are draining like your neighborhood, or they're draining a couple streets, or they're draining just a little small area. These are your little small tributary streams. Small being the key and critical word here. So upstream, they happen in small streams. They occur over a small area. They usually form from either high volume, rapid rainfall, like from a big thunderstorm system, or they can form from what, like we've had the last couple of days, heavy rain, which is over several days, just going rain. What happens with that high volume, that quick, sudden high volume input, those small channels fill up. They fill up faster than they can drain. And so they'll fill and overflow very quickly. They simply don't have capacity. It's kind of like taking a 7-year-old with you to do Black Friday shopping. And if you do that, you're a much braver soul than I. But you're bringing the kid along so he or she can carry all your bags for you. Now, by the end of the day, that kid's gonna, the bags he's trying to carry are probably gonna be a lot more than he himself weighs. He's gonna be overwhelmed. He can't do it. He's too small. He's not big enough. He doesn't have the strength to carry it all himself. That's what happens with these small streams. They get overwhelmed with that much water. They can't handle it. They're too small to hold it. But where are those small streams bringing that water? They're bringing it as tribute. They are tributary streams. They're bringing it downhill to a bigger stream. So it's like that 7-year-old getting his cell phone and calling his older brother to come over and help him. Oh, yeah, I can carry that for you. Yeah, no problem, because he's bigger and stronger. It's not as much of a problem. So the smaller streams will bring all that extra water downhill to a bigger channel that has a higher volume capacity that can hold it. So fortunately, these upstream floods, even though they can develop very quickly, they don't last long. They're gone in a matter of hours, maybe a day. Maybe a couple of days, that's it. Just long enough for those small streams to have the time to bring that water downhill to something bigger that can hold it.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
What's the word after snow melt?
USU period is short for usually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm being lazy.
It's all right. I was just...
Just yuzu. What's the word yuzu? Do you know what yuzu means? What's wrong with you? And it's probably, there are probably like 8 people in this room that thanking you for asking that. So it's good to know. I guess I didn't know what that was.
I just kind of left it blank, and I figured I'd
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's
later.
fine. Yeah, that's no problem. Yeah, if you don't add, can't read my scribble, go ahead and ask. Yeah, that's no problem. So we call these flash floods. All of that rain, some areas around town picked up almost 4 inches in the last couple of days. But we did not have a whole lot of flash flood problems, which tells me we were pretty doggone dry. That water just sucked right into the ground, I guess. These are flash floods. They tend to be seasonal. We'll get them in the fall when we're transitioning into winter. We'll get them in the spring. We're changing, our storm patterns are changing into the summer, and definitely when you combine that with snow melt. So they tend to be seasonal. Downstream floods. Downstream are going downhill. As we go downhill, our streams get bigger. That little stream up here feeds into the Great Miami, and that goes downhill to the Ohio, and that goes downhill to the Mississippi. So the farther downhill you go, the bigger the streams get. So to have a downstream flood means that you have a major stream, like the Ohio, like the Mississippi, like the Great Miami, that's full to capacity and is overflowing. That's a bit different.
Doesn't that kind of go with the fact that they're saying that like every year the Nile is expanding like in vast proportions? As it goes farther down, and it's getting so much wider that eventually it's just going to... I read something like last year, it was talking about as the Nile river's going down, it's expanding so quickly down, going down how they're going to be...
I've not heard that. What I have heard is that the Nile is actually, I've heard just the opposite, it's dwindling, because climate change is causing the snow caps on Mount Kilimanjaro. It's down. It's about a third of their normal size, so they're losing their water volume, and the Nile's actually losing water.
As it's going farther down, it's getting wider, but it's kind of narrow, just so there's...
I'd have to read what you read. You remember where it's at? To get it in context.
I just remember reading it just about a year ago.
I'll have to look that up. I didn't hear that. I'm not sure I understand what they mean by that.
I remember reading that somewhere.
No, I don't know. I'd have to look that up. I had not heard that. So downstream floods definitely are going to impact much larger streams. Because of that, they're going to impact a much more regional area. Much larger area. They're going to form over a long period of time.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Example being Niagara Falls,
An example of what?
like the downstream.
Downstream flood? You can have a flood on the Niagara River. But the falls are there only because you have part of the river that's higher than the other. And so it has to fall down to the vertical cliff.
So like as far as like being a part of it, you would still like consider it one?
I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
Like Niagara River all put together, it's still considered downstream?
Yes.
Or-
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Eventually, those falls, all falls do this, they're moving uphill as the time goes by. So eventually that will, like, I don't know, 100,000 years, that the falls won't exist. It'll go all the way up to the lake. And then the lake will drain through the Niagara River, which probably would be a good thing. But yeah, it's still part of it. Yeah, you can have the Niagara flood. When the Niagara floods, they actually have diversion channels that go around the falls, so they'll open those up so that the water can get over the falls and through the diversion, so it helps drain that really fast. Yeah. I can't recall, I mean, not to say that there haven't been, but I can't recall any major flood events on the Niagara. It's used a lot, for agriculture, power supply, navigation, drinking. So a lot of that water is diverted for other uses. So the water levels usually are pretty low. Yeah. Any other questions? After raining steadily for 2 days, I didn't think you guys have so many water questions. Developed over several months. As an example, the Mississippi flood in '92 was a regional downstream flood. It impacted the upper Mississippi Valley, especially through the Dakotas and down as far as Missouri. At the height of this flood, there were 9 states that were impacted. At the height of the flood, the entire state of Iowa was underwater. There's a difference between, oh my gosh, Preble County's got a flash flood warning. Who cares in Montgomery County? There's a difference between that and Iowa is underwater. Okay, yeah. So it's all extreme channel size. The '92 flood actually began in the fall of '91. That region had had very high rainfall going into the fall, had very high snowfall throughout the winter. So by the time spring came around, the ground was already full of water. There were several feet of snow on the ground. And then it started to rain again. Of course, the rain melted the snow, but couldn't get through the still frozen ground. So rivers were already running high. And then coming into May, there's a powerful storm system that came down out of the Canadian Rockies. Freaking Canadian, oh, they're cold. Came down out of the Canadian Rockies and stalled over the upper plains. And it just sat there, and it rained, and it rained, and it rained for almost 3 weeks. Rain and rain and rain. All of those rivers had nowhere else to bring the water. The ground was full to capacity, and plus it had all the melted snow, and they were already running high. So all of that went to the Mississippi. The Mississippi basically just ran out of room. And the Mississippi River drains to the Gulf of Mexico, so it was a long time before that much water was able to get all the way to the end and back to the ocean. That Mississippi flood lasted 2.5 months. It's massive. Trucks and trains could not cross the Mississippi for over 6 weeks. either because the bridges were out, or they were severely damaged, or the water was so high it was not considered safe. And then after the waters went down, all of that stuff's got to be inspected for safety first before they can open it to traffic. So interstate commerce between east and west was greatly impacted. These are downstream floods. They can be nasty, but it proves the point. That is, bigger events happen less often. When looking at flooding and looking at all natural hazards, we're looking at something called the recurrence interval. It is an estimate of how frequently an event of a given size occurs and when to expect its occurrence again in the future. It's one of the reasons why scientists study natural hazards, why we keep track of when they happen, where they happen, what results. We keep track of all that because we're looking for a historical pattern. Because if it's happened in the past, it will probably happen again. And we're hoping that there's some pattern in previous historical behavior that will give us a clue as to when to expect the next one. And that's the recurrence interval. Now that recurrence interval is a measurable quantity. And we measure it for flooding, for volcanism, for coastal storms. Definitely, we try to do it for earthquakes as best as we can. We use it on all natural hazards to try to get an idea of when to expect the next major event. Now, the recurrence interval is only as good as our current level of understanding of these natural processes and how they work. It's only as good as the amount of historical data that we have. The Mississippi flood surprised us. It's been estimated to be as much as a 1 in 500 year flood. Our historical records for that part of the river only went back 200 years at most. So we had nothing in the official historical record to suggest that a flooding of that magnitude could occur. So it surprised us. The 1913 flood that hit us here in Dayton in March of 1913 is a 100-year flood. 2001? 2001? 2001? Yeah. Now, since the flood, because of it, Daytonians and people in southwestern Ohio spent buku money. Okay, 1913, when people got maybe $2 a day to work. Okay, and they were able to buy all their groceries for a nickel. In 1913, the city of Dayton and its residents raised over $2 million for flood control. That was a lot of money. Now, since then, we've used that money to build flood control dams, to improve levees on the banks of the river, to make the channel deeper and wider so it can hold more water. We maintain the floodplain, we keep trees out of it. We keep the channel dug out, we keep extra sediment out of the bottom to keep it deep. And so that really goes a long way to help minimize the likelihood of a flood that size occurring again. It also greatly minimizes the amount of damage. Because also back then we had a canal. You guys familiar with Canal Street? Because it used to be. Yeah. That basically connected the Mad River through town all the way back to the Great Miami. It was connected part of the Erie Canal. Well, of course, when the flood comes down the river, oh look, I can go that way too. And that's where it went. Of course, that helps just spread the flood all over Dayton. We filled that sucker in. Okay. So it's not there anymore. So we've done things to minimize the potential of that happening again. But we will get another 1913 flood. It's just the impact of it will be less than it was before. Several dozen people died in that flood. But you gotta remember, it's pre-TV. So if anything happened, people went to go watch it because they couldn't stay at home and watch it. on TV. So when people heard the river was in flood, they went down to the river to go watch it. And many people were there when the levee broke and they were taken out and they drowned. Now this is 1913, this is March. We know how cold and disgusting it can be in March, right? Now, 1913, they're not wearing Vortex, they're not wearing Sinsulate, they're wearing wool. Wool coat, wool suit, wool pants, wool skirt, wool socks, wool underwear. It's cold. When wool gets wet, it gets very, very heavy. Have you ever been in a swimming pool just with your cotton denim jeans on? You feel how heavy that water, it soaks it up and makes your legs feel real heavy? That wool pulls them down into the water. It can triple your weight in the water. Yeah, it absorbs it all and just drinks you down with the weight. You ever been in a shower and the hot water kicks out and this water suddenly is really cold and you jump in a pool or a lake and it's really cold? You cannot not do that. Somewhere there's an English teacher cringing. Cannot not do it. You cannot stop yourself from doing that. There you go, that sounds better, doesn't it? Yes, English minor, let's do something well right here. You cannot stop yourself from doing that. It's a biologic response. It's a reflex to the cold. How cold do you think rainfall and snowmelt would be in March? Pretty cold. That water was probably 40 degrees if you were lucky. So people that fell in the water, got swept in the water, even if it was just a few feet high, would have had that response, and if their head's underwater, when they're going to drown. It's awesome event. That event again started the previous fall. Heavy rainfall, heavy snow. We got a storm system that came in about a week before Easter in March. It took out half of Oklahoma with some of the worst tornadoes on record. And they came through us, and it just started raining. We got like 9 inches in 2 days. The ground was frozen. We still had snow on the ground. The water had nowhere to go. River level rose more than 9 feet in less than 12 hours. So yeah, that's why a lot of people were actually trapped in their attic. They went to the second story and into the attic. That's how fast the water came up. They had to actually cut through the attic, the roof line, to get on the roof. Yes, you walk downtown on Main Street, there are markings that show you where the flood was. That is awesome. Yeah.
You know, it's funny, you don't really think about it until you start talking about it, but like, how many square miles is Dayton? So all that water, all that square miles goes into a channel that seems big until you start looking at it.
Yeah, it's a little small thing, yeah.
It's a little small.
Yeah, it fills up pretty quick. Yeah. It can last for months. But see, we can look at that flood and we keep record of that. And we can calculate that was about a 100-year flood. Now, what that means is that we can expect a flood of that size any day, at least once within 100 years. Now, there are other factors that impact that. Again, we have since then changed and modified the rivers. That has an impact. And there's been climate change, which also has an impact. It changes the distribution of rainfall and snowmelt and temperature. So we may have to revise our estimates.
Out of curiosity, I know it had an even more negative effect, but once that goes down to, how about an impact was it more on like Cincinnati going towards Ohio? I know it was bad here.
Yeah, it took out major bridges in Germantown. It utterly destroyed Germantown, and that's pretty far south from here. By the time it got to Cincinnati, the channel was wide enough. Yeah, it was nasty. There's all kinds of debris. It didn't cause a lot of damage because of the debris, everybody's broken houses and whatnot, and flowing in it. But once it hit the Ohio, it was a big enough channel where it was able to drain that out. But it didn't really impact Cincinnati directly, but indirectly, because they sent a lot of aid. For a long time. Yeah. But it's kind of sad when you think about the flood in 1913. The Wright brothers had just flown and all that stuff. Okay. It's how often, if you're watching like international news, how often do you hear the date? Did something happen in Dayton? Other than like, somebody blew something up or something.
Not very often.
Not very often. You know, we had a tornado once, and I think we had that tornado in Beaver Creek, and off there, up the Indian Ripple, this past summer. That made the Weather Channel. It's like, oh my gosh, it's a Dayton. Yeah, it's woohoo, right? Yeah. Oh, that was there. Awesome.
That was literally in the parking lot, right?
Sweet. I got to watch them. But you know, in the 1913 flood here in Dayton made headline news in Paris, in Alaska, around the world. Oh my gosh, yeah, everyone in Dayton's dead. They've had a massive flood. Please send aid. There was aid from literally not only around the country, but from around the world. And they came in. And, well, Dayton was so huge. It had Wright Brothers, it had NCR, built made cash registers. And I mean, we were a very prominent. We were in the news all the time. You know how
Kind
far.
of equivalent of like Louisiana.
Yeah. How far we followed.
Oklahoma, Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Tornado.
Yeah, but we were top of the world. So that happened. It was intense. But now the good thing, these big events don't happen that often, and that should make sense. Smaller events happen more frequently. It doesn't take much for them to happen. Okay? Think of it this way, and this applies to floods, to earthquakes, to volcanism, to everything. Landsliding, coastal storms. Think of it this way. We got Halloween coming up this weekend, right? Okay. So, you know, if you're sitting around school, like, you know what, we got Halloween, forget the kids, I'm going to have a party, I'm an adult party. You know, you get your phone out, you get the internet with it. You know, you text a few people, you know, some friends, you know, your significant other, and maybe, you know, some relatives. You go, hey, you know, let's have a Halloween party at my place this weekend. You start getting people, yeah, I'll bring the beer, I'll bring some potato salad, I'll make some hamburgers, and I'll get, oh, okay. Yeah. So, you know, you leave school, you leave work, you stop at the store on your way, you pick up some hamburger buns and chips, and you go home, you run the vacuum, and you clean the bathroom. You know, you're ready for a party. No big deal, right? And so, yeah, imagine the cops coming in there. So, you know, no big deal. But now, have you ever had to plan a wedding? All I can say is I got something to doing it twice, and I will never do it again. I don't care if you have to sell your car. Pay for the wedding planner. Don't do it yourself. Okay. An event like that, you've got to start planning that at least a year in advance. If you want to have Bridezilla, what she used to have. Because you have to get the reception hall, you have to get the caterer, you have to get the band, the DJ, the flowers. Oh my gosh, you have to get the shoes, dyes, and match the bridesmaid dresses. You have to get the right dress. You have to get the right veil. You have to have the invitations. The invitations, I'm going to tell you right now, the invitations you order once, they come back, you'll have to send them back 3 times because they spell the room name, they have the wrong address, and then on the 3rd time, the bride decides that she wants a different design. So, to have that happen, it happens, you know, 2 weeks before the event, you know, the DJ, they find out the band broke up, okay, there was a bug in pollen, so now she can't have her tulips. A lot more has to happen in the right order, in the right place. A lot more has to line up to make that go off without a hitch. Of course, and then the all-time favorite is the week before, she'll start getting cold feet and start thinking that she's not going to go through with it. I'm dragging you now. You are. You're married pod, and that's the end. And you're not going to get married. Yeah.
Why don't they just go away?
Oh, I know, seriously, I know. If you wonder if there's something. Yeah, but it's just saying, yeah, there you go, Vegas. You have, in a bigger event, there are a lot of other processes that have to happen in the right order, the right time, to add up to that big event. And that just doesn't come through that often. It's a good thing for us. But it can make it more difficult to predict accurately. And then we have another very important factor. Who here knows someone personally who's old enough to remember World War II, personally, first-hand experience? A few people. Are they still alive?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are they going to be for long?
No.
Not much. Not much. Who here has someone, or I'll put it this way, who here personally, first-hand experience, meaning you remember it, it happened when you were alive, you were there, remember the Xenia tornado of 1974? That's not a whole lot of people in this room. Who here has living relatives, people they know personally, who remember the 1913 flood? Nobody. Nobody. That's another problem with this. Yeah, if you do, I need to know what they're eating. It's probably yogurt. So, this is another problem. This outlives people who were there when it happened the first time. And that makes it that much more difficult for us to do this, but we're trying to convince people how bad something's going to be to get them to leave. You know, that tornado siren goes off, I'm in the basement. That's it. I'm not going in there. I'm not, not doing it. I would rather be inconvenienced and be safe and have it turn out to be nothing than to be in it. Why? I remember that tornado. Okay? My dad had friends that lost their families, that lost their properties in that tornado. He had friends that were driving home 90 miles an hour on 35, trying to get home, and watched it cross the interstate into their neighborhood. And then had to stop by the police and not let it go in. And I was there.
I lived in Xenia, and the neighborhood behind where they put little apartments in, the ones they put in real quick.
Yeah.
Right there off of Lower Bellbrook.
Yeah.
They put those in, right? And I'm like, why did they put apartments in this neighborhood? They said, they put them in after the storm. There was no neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly.
Gone,
It's
flat.
gone.
Yeah. They put them there so people would have somewhere to be.
Yeah, he did the basement. Yeah.
I lived in
We always do.
Oh, yeah.
We always do. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Never get the tornado that
You get the, yeah. There's some debate. Yeah.
They had no idea.
See, but if you lose that, we had lost this with Katrina. We lost it with Katrina. There are a lot of people that didn't leave or couldn't leave, which is a problem with state government. Don't get me started on that one. But you know, it was difficult to convince people how bad it was going to be. And I remember on the Weather Channel, a lot of times they were saying, well, it's going to be as bad as Camille, as bad as Camille, at least as bad as Camille. Hurricane Camille was in '69. Katrina was in 2005. Not a lot of people still around that remember Camille firsthand. But you know, if you've got that old crotchety uncle that's sitting there going, oh my gosh, it's going to be another Camille, pack up the bags with the kids in the car, we're leaving now. Oh, it's going to be nothing. No. I was here. I lived it. I remember it. We're leaving. We're getting out now. Okay, let's go. That's a lot more convincing than having some stranger on TV go, you really should leave. But you know, so when you lose that, because these don't happen that often, it can be much more difficult to get people out of harm's way than they need to. You lose that personal connection. Difficult.
I live in like a part of town where like there's no houses around.
Yeah.
There's something like a tornado or anything, like a big storm, you can see it perfectly from my backyard.
Cool.
And I'm like, if a tornado siren goes off, I'm in the basement.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
not
that's it.
going outside, but my family is just, oh, let's go in the backyard and watch it until it hits our backyard. So then we'll run inside.
Now, do you know how many people have been killed by tsunami because they went down to the beach and watched it?
Oh, that same line of storms that took out in Ohio.
Yeah.
Took out some in Alabama.
Yeah.
Oh, that remember?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
I can imagine a flood. I was
See, it was
after like Katrina, like
Yeah.
hazards and things out of water.
Yeah. And that's what kills you. That's what kills you. You get battered, you get blunt force trauma by the things that are in the water with you.
Having 30 shots if you fall in the water.
Yeah, that's not, yeah, that's not good. Is there any questions?
Get the basement.
I'm gonna kick you guys out because I'm gonna have some